Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me tonight on A World Awakening. Everybody's very excited. I've been reading the messages. My phone has been, I don't even want to tell you how many people have reached out to me and thanked me for securing Mr. Steve Bassett for our show tonight. We have a 2-hour program tonight because Jeff Turner could not be with me on Soul School. And he wanted me to send his blessings and his love to all of you, our extended family. So with that said, I just want to prepare you for what's coming. And Bill will let me know as soon as Steve shows up, which he will do. He's always just a little bit of the side of on time. But he is one of the most intellectually erudite people I have ever met. It is my pleasure, truly, to call him my friend. He is not only brilliant, but he has a complete and utter command of this subject matter and what we will be discussing tonight. And I will let him do a good deal of the talking. But what we will be discussing tonight are recent events, which have occurred in Washington, D.C. and elsewhere. He knows everything about this subject. He has been so deeply immersed in the research surrounding UFOs and what they now refer to as UAPs. Because, it's always so important when you're going to try to take charge of a subject that you give it its own name. Well, that's just my opinion. I understand to a certain extent why they needed to alter the vernacular to be more inclusive. Because the fact is that UFOs are so-called unidentified flying objects. But this is greater and deeper and broader a subject and involves more people than you might imagine who are doing a great deal of significant research on the subject around the world. Well, Steve's familiar with all of it. Steve Bassett has been working as basically a lobbyist in Washington, D.C. for decades and trying to bring this incredibly important subject matter to the forefront to get the attention that it needs and it deserves. And he has a lot of opinions on the subject, but he is also extremely well versed, not only in what he's learned, but also what's been happening all around the world on this subject. Recently, I'm sure you're aware that there was, it's called AARO. It's a group that was formed within the Department of Defense to review, I guess is one way to put it, to review the information that has been released. And then, of course, there was the panel in Washington, which was extremely important, but we really only got a fraction of the information because once David Grush and his companions started whistleblowing for all intents and purposes, they wrapped it up, relatively quickly and kind of took everybody off to a skiff where that information was parsed and more information, I'm sure, was forthcoming from these high-ranking military officials who decided that it was time to share their information with the world. That is not only of utmost importance, but what is most important is that we don't know what was discussed behind closed doors. What we do know is that when they came out, Bill, come up. I have to talk to Steve. He's calling me. Hi, Steve.
I left him a message.
Oh, you are backstage. Okay, Bill.
I don't see him.
Bill does not have you. Bill, send him the link again.
I will.
Maybe it's corrupted. It could be corrupted, but it's okay. Just come on in whenever you're ready. He's going to send a new, fresh link to you right now. Yeah, I don't know. I don't have mine up. But hey, you're in the show. I'm singing your praises right now, this minute, to everybody that's watching. So see, Steve Bassett's on the phone. Pardon me? No, now 9 to 11. Oh no. Oh God, I'm gonna have to kill him, and that's unfortunate because he's a really good producer. Okay, great. Okay. All right. Bill, you sent him something that said to come on at 10 instead of 9. Oh, his eyes are as big as saucers. We'll see you in a minute, sweetheart. Okay, bye.
That's because I'm so used to your normal schedule.
I know. So he's like, wait, I'm early. Wait, I'm early. No, you're not. You know what? If anybody has any question in their minds, how we fly, how we rock and roll, how we do this, now they know, seat of our pants sometimes.
It's live.
I know, it's live. No question about it, how live we are. Hey, technically, Steve has already been on the show because he called me.
And the show that he was on a few months ago, that was one of the best. I'm just saying, that was one of the best shows of World Awakening. That was excellent.
Yeah, he is. He's excellent. And so yeah, he'll be hopping in. He was just confused. He thought I only wanted him from 10 to 11. And baby cakes, that is all on you. That is all on you.
There he is. Steve, it's all my fault. It's all my fault, Steve. And I apologize to you because I kind of screwed that up, Steve.
He's so sorry, Steve. He's very sorry. See how sorry he is?
I am. Because actually, Steve is one of my favorite people when he comes on.
I know.
And he's trying to probably figure out his audio. So we're going to have to do this while we're live, folks.
Okay, we're going to just do this while we're
just going to wing it. So, Steve, if you can hear us, just check your settings in StreamYard and make sure that your audio, microphone, and speakers are all set properly. We cannot hear you, but can you hear us? Shake your head yes. Okay, so just check your mic settings. All right. But Stephen Bassett has been involved with this for a long
decades. Stephen has, as I was saying, Stephen has been involved up to his eyeballs in this for decades.
And if anybody's got the finger on the pulse of things,
yes, it's Mr. Bassett. Yes, it is.
Can you hear me now?
Yes,
absolutely, perfectly.
Steve, what's the website? Paradigm Research Group. What is it?
Paradigm Research Group.
My website is paradigmresearchgroup.org. If you can put that up where people can see it, I'm going to be referring to it a lot tonight.
Okay. Yes. Well, you two have a great show. I'm leaving. I'm out. And again, Stephen, my apologies. It's all my fault. So
it's nothing. It's nothing. It's a bag of shit.
It's nothing. We still have plenty of time.
All right, you guys have a great
We're only 10 minutes in.
All right. Okay. And by the way, that photo, wow,
that photo.
Into it more.
You at the congressional hearing.
Yeah, that's
my new favorite photo. We're going to put it up when we're talking about that.
Goodbye.
Spread it around. Okay. Yeah.
It's so good to see you, my friend. You are. You're going to have to listen to the first few minutes of the show in the archive so that your head blows up because. I've basically been letting people and new viewers that are not really familiar with you yet, as well as those that have been begging me for months to get you back on the show, that their minds are going to be blown. And that's the most important part of this. That's why this is a world awakening, because it's time. We're all grown up. It's time to start dealing with the reality and look at our old reality with new eyes. This is not a new reality. This has been going on for a very, very long time. So, without further ado, I know how much you have on your mind and everything that you have to share. And I did ask Bill not to put any questions from the audience up, because they can throw things off. Now, if you change your mind about that, you let him know or tell me, and this is a live show. He'll go through and pick some good ones, but you've got your finger on the pulse of all of this. We don't, anything that they ask, you're going to answer within the next couple of hours.
Can I modify that? How long is the show tonight?
We'll be on till 11 p.m. Eastern time, or just short of it, just a few minutes short of it.
So 6 to 8. We got 2 hours.
Yes.
So I love doing Q&A. I love doing Q&A. So let's set aside the last 30 to 40 minutes for Q&A.
Okay.
Absolutely. So if they want to, well, they can put their questions up. They just need to write them down on their side and get ready to ask them. But we will go to Q&A about 40 minutes out. Good.
Excellent. That's wonderful. Okay. The floor is yours. The show is yours. You know what I want to talk about. I want to talk about the Arrow report. I want to talk about the congressional hearing. I want to talk about all the new information that's coming out, and then them telling us nothing to see here, folks. All of you go home and don't forget to wear your tinfoil hats. The report itself, I found it incredibly condescending. But then what should we expect? Because in my opinion, and I'll just leave you with this and then you just run with it. In my opinion, there's nothing else that they can really do. That if they admit to one encounter, or if they admit to one absolutely bona fide photograph or bona fide film footage, that's the game. That's it. And so they're just not going to disclose why they took the panelists into a skiff to have a hours-long private conversation after they revealed what they did in public, I think is very telling in its own right. So go ahead. What do you think, Steve? What's going on?
Well, I think I have some good news for you. Let me get this camera a little better.
Good.
That looks good. Now this is complicated, and I can't have nothing but appreciation for people that have a life. They do things, raise children, go to jobs or whatever, trying to follow this and make sense of it. There are people that are sort of following it, and they're posting a lot, but it's simply does not reduce to a kind of, well, that's good, this is bad, this is the good guys, he's a bad guy. It's way more complicated.
Way more.
So let me see if I can at least give you a sense. How can I put this? One way to think of the report, I don't know what happened there. Oh, it's Mike. I get to come back here, you little sucker. No problem. Come here. Here we go. One way to think of this report is a Hail Mary pass fired off by the DOD because they had panicked.
Right. That's
one way to think of it. All right. And probably that is exactly what it is. The Department of Defense, the military intelligence complex is a very insulated group. First of all, they love secrecy, so they're in secret. They love working underground, so they're underground. They're really busy defending the country from, God knows, all enemies, domestic and foreign. Mm-hmm. And so they are very insulated. They don't have much of a sense of what is going on in the public arena. And it gets worse because if you're a high level officer, you're a high level appointee to the DOD or the CIA or whatever, you don't have an internet account. You don't have a Twitter account. You're not on Facebook. You loathe that. You stay away from it. It's nothing but poison. And also it's undignified. And so they're not in social media. They don't get it. They think it's all crap and so forth. So that also insulates them. And so as situations got really severe, I mean, they were getting backed up completely against the wall. somebody over at DOD said, back in 1969, we just shut this baby down. I mean, things were getting really difficult. Blue Book was, investigating, 15,000 cases, and that's a lot of work and a lot of money. And of course, the very existence of Blue Book kept people's interest up. And NICAP was very strong, APRO and NICAP, particularly NICAP. Substantial members, all very high level PhD people, scientists and so forth, military, because it was early, right? And people didn't really fully think that, no, the government actually is never going to give this to you. So NICAP was a problem. And overall, the interest was there and growing, they felt, and they said, we got to stop this. And so what they did was pretty severe. It wasn't the worst thing the government's ever done, I assure you. They said, okay, look, we're going to get a professor at the University of Colorado to put together a completely bogus report, a study. Dr. Edward Condon. Now, I mean no disrespect to the doctor's family, but your family member utterly disgraced himself, and his legacy in history will always be that. Nothing else he did is worth anything. He also disgraced the University of Colorado, which at some point is going to have to apologize for this. I used to live in Boulder, and it's a cool school. I used to play tennis down on the courts. Whatever, it's a nice school, but that's not the kind of thing you just walk away from forever. Someday it's going to come back to bite you.
Yes.
And so he puts together this completely bogus report, which later we come to understand that because we found certain texts and what have you, in which he literally confessed ahead of time. I mean, he was talking ahead of time that he already, there's nothing to this, right? Before he even started the report. And it's probably much worse than that, but whatever. And so with that report, they said, well, there's really nothing to this. And it's wrong to spend huge amounts of taxpayers' money investigating thousands and thousands of cases. There was 701 that we couldn't explain at all, but that was probably because they didn't have the balls to say every single one of them has been explained and it's not ET. They didn't say we're going to have a hangout, some. They did. So they shut it down. Blue Book is done. Okay, fine. I get it. It was 17 years, but they weren't done. NICAP was a problem. So NICAP had to be destroyed. Now, the destruction of NICAP has not been really investigated to the detail it should be. It will eventually be investigated, and it will eventually end up on some streaming media. Okay? Yeah. But Anne Druffel looked into it, and I encourage people to read her wonderful book, Firestorm, The Life, and I forget the full title, Life of James McDonald, Dr. James McDonald, Life and Research of Dr. James McDonald. And in there, she goes into the destruction of NICAP. And NICAP was so upstanding that not only were there all kinds of engineers and scientists and military people that were members, they had high-level people on the board, including people from the CIA. But it was open. It wasn't undercover. Okay, no problem. So when it came time to shut down NICAP, I think basically, without more research, I can give you a rough idea. They approached the CIA members of the board and said, look, you need to shut this baby down. Okay. And they did in the most undignified way. What they did was quickly vote Donald Keogh out, and didn't just throw him out, but they came up with a BS explanation that there was financial improprieties.
Yeah.
And so he had to go. He disgraced them.
Yeah.
And once he was gone, they started shutting all the chapters down around the country. But the dues were still coming in. And so they spent that money on themselves until there was no more money and it was gone. So NICAP was gone.
Shameful. Absolutely shameful. And to deliberately destroy a man's reputation. Deliberately. But,
it happens a lot.
They've done worse.
Yeah.
People have died.
So they were free. NICAP's gone, and Blue Book is shut down. Now, immediately, a new organization replacing NICAP, which emerged sort of out of Aero and I think Southwest MUFON or North, whatever, but out of that suddenly a MUFON National happens and becomes a thing, 1969. So at this very same time, MUFON takes NICAP's place. Now, I don't want to go further than that. I think the history of NICAP in the early years is worth very, very careful and intense analysis. History hasn't done that yet. It will. So whatever was going on back then, I will only say this: NICAP has become MUFON has become the MUFON it needs to be, the MUFON of the 21st century. It is growing fast. It has an excellent board. It is doing all the right things. It has a full media program that's growing, that is managed and directed by Ron James. They're up on the Hill interviewing and filming members of Congress. They've hired I first told them they needed to do this in 1997. Free advice.
Wow, yeah.
They hired a full-out lobbying firm.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I've been a registered lobbyist, but it was just me. And I didn't do that much lobbying, but this is the real deal. Paying some bucks. So MUFON is now where it has to be. Where it was in 69, 77, all those times, I don't know. All I know is it immediately sprung up to replace NICAP. And they were out of it, right? And it was great. And they said, oh, boy, it's all settled. We can go back to, defending the country and whatever, and working on that ET tech and the underground facilities and finding out cool stuff. It's all going to be great. It's going to be great. And then 9 years later, something happened that changed everything. And that was that two researchers, Bill Moore, I'm pretty sure it was Bill Moore, and of course the legend Stanton Friedman, discovered the whereabouts of Jesse Marcel Sr. And they interviewed him, and from that came the reaffirmation, the re-emergence of Roswell, big time. It was virtually gone after they kind of got things under control, late 47. And so essentially 31 years later, he's still alive. And of course, he told them everything he could, and it brought Roswell to life. And then that became the center of the interest for many, many people. And there was nothing they could do about it, because you can't erase the Roswell event from history. What Roswell? What town? New Mexico? Never heard of that state. And now they're back in it again. All right. So it's from 78 on, they're fighting. And they managed to keep the truth embargo going from 78 to 2014, which is another 36. I'm sorry, 36 years. Yeah. No. 72, 28.
Don't ask me. I suck at math.
Yeah. 78 is 22. And 24, another 46 years. Okay.
Yes.
Now,
I thought you were right the first time. Yeah.
A lot happened in those 46 years, but a lot has happened in the last 7. And big time stuff has happened in the last 7. To push the truth embargo to the absolute limits of its ability, push the government to the limits of its propaganda skills until it was practically against the wall. And somebody came up with an idea that, look, let's do it again, what we did in 69. And so here's what we'll do. We're going to use, and I feel very badly for him because that's exactly what happened. We're going to use Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick, who had a fine career. He's a smart man. He's done plenty.
Stellar reputation. Yep.
Yeah. He was put in charge of Arrow because somebody had to be in charge. And based upon where things are going, it might have worked out, but it didn't go the way they expected. And he was caught in the middle, impossible situation. Ultimately, he just couldn't take it anymore. And we can get back to that. And he resigned. Okay, fine. They put in a new interim director. But then some other things happened, and they go, whoa, what are we going to do? 1969. And I don't know how this unfolded. I assumed that Dr. Kirkpatrick had been putting together some kind of report already, but after he is gone, he apparently they're putting out a report that he is essentially the one that's authoring. It's the Arrow study of what it had done. In other words, basically a summary. Here's what we did. The DOD puts that out and essentially make Sean Kirkpatrick, as far as I understand it, and it's possible that it's a little trickier than this, but essentially, if I'm right, they make Sean Kirkpatrick the Dr. Edward Condon of 2014. right?
Yeah.
Basically the fall guy. And so they then use his report, right? The Arrow report to shut down. Well, not to shut down Arrow, because that would be kind of awkward. They use this report to basically make the issue moot, no matter what Arrow does or doesn't do. So essentially they neutered it. All right.
Yes.
And the only thing they haven't done and they can't do is, okay, we destroyed Nightcap, so let's go destroy MUFON. Well, they can't do that. So that should have been their first clue. This isn't 1969. Now, here's their second problem. In 2024, because again, remember I talked about they're insulated so much and all the secrecy, the underground crap, whatever, and they're not on the internet because that's too dangerous and they just make fun of it. There's a bunch of crazy people on TikTok, blah, 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 blah. The internet has got several billion, I don't know how many it is, it may be 4. There are billions of people on the internet using any number of social media platforms. Most people that are in platforms are multiple platforms. They have the ability to communicate in numbers of ways instantaneously. They can call by the phone, they can call on WhatsApp, they can call on Signal, they can do a Skype, right? And immediately convey something to somebody else. And if that person is in Korea and they have something to say, then they can text it and that person can translate it on Google. Or if it's on their website, that person can simply go translate and be reading what you're trying to tell them on Google. In other words, the internet and that advanced translation software has essentially solved the Tower of Babel. Right. The Tower of Babel, which irritated the God because the people were trying to climb up to heaven, and he felt that was rather ambitious. And so he decided to punish them. Yeah. He decided to punish them by suddenly giving them all different languages. So they couldn't communicate and they couldn't build anything anymore. Mm-hmm. Okay, so a couple thousand years, well, thousands of years later, I don't know, 3, whatever the hell, here we are. And the Tower of Babel, that's not going to work. We got thousands of languages, and most of the major ones, for 90% or more of the entire population, can communicate at will. And we're not just building a tower that was going to be maybe 15 stories high. We have gone into space. We have a Voyager outside the solar system heading into the void. So this isn't a Tower of Babel. This is 2024. And so it's not going to work. And so you've got these billions of people, and it's worse because unlike 1969, between now and then, overall, since 51, almost 600 films, most of which got big screen representation, generating a couple of $100 billion in revenues of all types, have been aired and seen by billions of people around the world. Billions of people around the world have seen movies about it.
Planted. And once that seed is planted, you can't unknow, unthink, unfeel, unhear what it comes into human consciousness. And that's the mistake they made, Steve, because we have evolved, and it's not 1969 anymore, and it never will be again. We have evolved.
Mm-hmm. So the idea of ETs as a concept is virtually worldwide. I mean, you have to be living in the middle of the jungle of
Dark Ages,
some continent, or the Sentinel Island in the Indian Ocean, whatever. It's out there. It's everywhere. All right. Yeah. So that's there, right? So that's already well established. Let's don't get into the nonfiction documentaries that have been made by hundreds who are in certainly the last 10, 15 years, have been available on streaming worldwide. And a lot of people don't know this, but Amazon, I think even YouTube, anything that goes up there under certain accounts, it's dubbed in multiple languages. It's captioned in multiple languages. So the nonfiction stuff is spreading around the world. Okay. And so with that in place, the ability of people to push back instantly from the web with enormous power. The web, here's what the web is. It's a hammer. You give somebody a hammer, they could take it and build a nice Habitat for Humanity home for some nice people. Mm-hmm. Or they could take it and become the hammer killer the serial hammer killer, and end up as a show on Dateline, right? So the internet can be for nuts, crazy stuff, trolling, whatever.
Which it is.
Which it is. But it can also be the most powerful activist tool ever in the history of the world.
Which it is.
Which it is. Okay. And they're thinking TikTok influencers, and they're missing the millions of people that, when the issue is substantive enough, are willing and capable to focus, communicate, and create stuff at will. So they have committed a spectacular blunder. And so they're going to eat every single word, every single letter of that report. It is going to be a disgrace. It is disgraced the leadership at the Pentagon, including Lloyd Austin, who absolutely signed off on that. There's no way they just snuck it out the side door.
There's no way he didn't sign off on that. No way.
Right. Maybe he didn't read it, but at least, you wanted, okay, well, I don't think that. It's disgraced, some of the staffers like Susan Gow. She doesn't make policy. She doesn't give editorials. She tells the press exactly what she's told to tell them. And so this little fiasco is really going to be hard on her, but she's just a staffer. All right. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people
they're devouring their young, Steve. They're devouring themselves from the inside over this because they don't know what to do because the genie is out of the bottle.
Well, it's been out of the bottle for a long, long time, but the genie is starting to kick their butt. So it's more than that. So this is what has transpired. All right. Now, it is without question a Hail Mary. Hail Marys, I think, in the NFL have about a 10% chance of success. So they start at 10%. Okay. But it gets worse, right? Because, in a Hail Mary, if you can maybe get 7 or 8 of your players down into the end zone, and there might be 7 or 8 of the opposition players, and they may just jump ball. Okay. Well, in this case, they may have some people in the end zone. I don't know who the hell they are, but the other side has got about 2 billion people in the end zone. And so the chances of that pass getting completed is 0. All right. So that is where we are. And that's what, as far as I'm concerned, the report is. Now, it will have implications. It has created a decision-making situation for a lot of people. Certainly the entire Congress, most importantly, the Intel Committee. It's decision-making for the media. Does this give us the license to walk away for a while, right? And they've been covering the issue extensively. If you go to my website, which I think the link is up on your show, paradigmresearchgroup.org, and you go to Resources Print Media Archive, in the last 7 years, since the To the Stars Academy came out, I have linked to 6,000 articles, meaning actual articles. You can go read them, 6,000 articles, and those are triaged from probably 15 to 16,000 articles, but they're just not substantive enough. They're fringe press or not really on subject, but they are sort of UAP related. Out of 16,000, I just triaged down to 6,000. The press is covering everything. Major press is covering everything. If you read all 6,000, you will find that less than 1% are skeptical pieces. I'm serious. All right. Yeah, and there is a skeptical piece, and not surprisingly, they're amusing. All right. And pathetic. No one is able to really write. Yeah. I've not seen anybody that's able to write a reasoned and at least a reasoned and appropriate skeptical piece on this issue. They just can't do it. And so it may seem reasoned to people that don't nothing, but people that know something, and that's what matters, no, they can't do it. So maybe less than 1%, maybe 1 in 200 is a skeptical piece. And I put the skeptical pieces up there. I don't shy away from them. All right. Think about that now. Just think about that. 6,000 articles in 7 years. Okay. Last year we hit 1,800. This year we're going to hit about 1,900. And the beauty of the way I have it set up is by year. And so you go to 2024, and you go in your search box, you put in New York Times, and you go click, and you just go ching, 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 and you read every New York Times article. And you can do it for 2023, 2021, and 2020, right? Guess what? The New York Times has written quite a few articles. Very few of them. Yeah. The Washington Post, same thing. Put a search on Washington Post, ching, 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 ching. And you can quickly see, wait a minute, this is not 1969. All right. So all right, let me get back up now. All right. So what is it that forced the Department of Defense? And by the way, I hope this isn't true, but it's not. It's interesting to note that this very bold, risky move in the face of the circumstances of our time was made just after the Secretary of Defense first had a serious medical problem regarding his prostate. 2, did not handle it well, had to literally get down on his knee and apologize. In other words, he was severely weakened politically. And then not long after that, weeks, suddenly this report goes through. Is it possible that one of the reasons they thought we can do this is that Lloyd is too weak right now to put up a fight? If that's true, then it's an even better story. I cannot wait for the documentary. All right. So what backed them up against the wall?
You want to make the documentary?
Oh, let me tell you, I'm out here in Hollywood right now, and I'm doing everything I can to help people network together to make lots of documentaries. Yeah. There's two nonfiction series breaking right now. There's a dozen more in the works.
I'm involved with one of them. In fact, I would like to involve you with it. So we'll be in touch, and I'll be out in California, out in LA soon.
Okay. But again, there is a tidal wave of nonfiction streaming content. Hopefully a doc or two will make it to the big screen, which has never happened. This town will not allow that. Yeah. I know, and the reason they won't allow it is because they don't want to poke the bear. If you can put up alien movies all day long, make $2 billion, but if you put up a documentary about the truth embargo or whatever, and you give it 3,000 screens, big giant screens, it gives the issue gravitas, it gives it power, and it advances disclosure. And Hollywood made the decision a long time ago, and I mean the film industry in general, we don't want to go there. Okay, but I think they're getting ready to go there, and so when you go there, you can read all the articles, which covers all the points. There's articles covering every single point I'm making right now. So essentially, after in the 7 years since December or October, December of 2017, members of the military intelligence complex have come forward. They've indicated that they want to engage this issue and show it to be true. Some of them eventually split off and started doing the specific work to try to advance this thing into Congress, also to put it in the media, put it into social media and podcasts and everything else. And as a result, the most important thing that happened between late 17 and late 2020, 3 years, is that, and this is exactly what's supposed to happen, is that with the help of some of these individuals, witnesses, how many, I don't know, it could be 150, 60, how many meetings, I don't know, could be 500, but people were being taken up on the Hill to talk about this issue privately to members of Congress of certain committees. And we know those committees are Armed Services, Intel, right? Maybe Appropriations. And these were all behind the scenes. So they're getting whatever they know about the issue, they're getting firsthand statements from witnesses that know about this subject, and they're getting them in a private setting, not a skiff, just private. There's going to be a press release on it. And this went on for several years. One day, I hope we find out who met with who and what and how. But the effect of this is that they're filling up the minds of these members of Congress with firsthand information from witnesses, getting them more and more comfortable with the idea of taking action. This went on for several years. And then in 2020, action began. The first time ever legislation regarding this issue was passed by Congress. a major milestone that most people didn't catch. It was like,
because we were in the middle of a pandemic and maybe a little distracted.
Of course. Nevertheless, and that's even more to the credit of Marco Rubio, because the pandemic was a major distraction, and he might have just said, I'm just going to stay away from it. But obviously, probably the entire Intel committee had been given a number of private briefings from a number of people and witnesses, and so it wasn't that easy. I think at some point he decided he would make the move. He was the chair of the committee, and so he decided, I'm going to move on this, and he did, to his great credit. And so he slipped a very modest
at all. It didn't hurt him a bit.
I'm not aware that this issue has hurt any politician in terms of political.
I don't think so either. Isn't it their job to, ferret things out and keep us informed? Isn't that really their job?
Well, it is their job, but there are plenty of things that their job calls for that can hurt them politically, big time, I assure you. But this issue is not one of them, oddly enough. And that's not spoken about enough. And so finally, he breaks the ice. Small piece of legislation goes into the COVID relief bill, $2.1 trillion. Nobody was going to hold up that bill over that legislation. And boom, it goes in, first time ever, calling for a report from the DOD regarding this issue by June 25, classified and public. And the Congress got a classified report, I think, prior to June 25 of 2021. And we got our public report on June 25 at the last minute. Wasn't a big deal. People were expecting more. I was not. But it was a report asked for by Congress, given out to the public by the Department of Defense. And that is June 25, 2021. Boom, a few more months come by, and new legislation is put up on the Senate legislative page for the 2022 bills. But this time it wasn't a COVID relief bill. It was the National Defense Appropriation Act, Authorization Act, rather, which is one of the most important bills that the Congress passes. And it's going to be in that bill. And this was then sponsored by Kirsten Gillibrand, because at that point, the Senate Intel Committee was now led by Democrats. Mark Warner was the chairman. And so, Marco Rubio put out that legislation. Now it was time for the other side. And interestingly enough, and I'd love to ask Mark about this if I ever get a chance to talk to him, I'm thinking that he could have done it. I mean, Rubio was the chairman, and now he's the chairman. Warner's the chairman. Why didn't he put out the second piece of legislation? And I think the reason is that Marco Rubio ran for president, seriously ran for president, and had a campaign. Mark Warner did not, but Kirsten Gillibrand did. And it's like he passed it over to a Democratic presidential candidate to balance the scale. And so she does she sponsors the next round of legislation. And this is significant. This is the one that creates the UAP task force, kind of takes it to another level, puts in some requests and reports and the usual things and so forth. And out he goes. Okay, fine. And by the way, at the very top of my website, paradigmresearchgroup.org, there are links, you can't miss them. There are links to a PDF or PDF file where I have taken the bill, which is very hard to read because of the way they structured the setup in bills. I made it a nice readable PDF file for every one of the 4 tranches of legislation, including the Senate legislation that was changed, the original Senate bill that was then changed. Okay. And then underneath that, there's a little pile of poop, and that is a link to the Arrow report. So all of that is right there on the top of my website for people to read at their pleasure, because everything I'm talking about is right in those links. And so now the second tranche of legislation is out the door, and that is Kirsten Gillibrand, and we go into the next year, 2022. And the bill in question would be the 2023 National Defense Authorization Act. And this one is sponsored by Warner. And it's a very substantial bill, quite a few pages. It sets up a range of things, issues regarding witnesses, issue regarding, just a lot of stuff, including creation of Arrow. The UAP task force becomes Arrow. Right. And everybody kind of knew that's the final That's the final resting place on this. The various names, there have been several that had come up in the legislation. UAP task force wasn't going to cut it. There was another one that wasn't going to cut it. And they ended up with Arrow. And it's interesting when people look at this stuff and say, they're not serious. It's all a joke. It's all a ruse. They're not going to do it. They're missing some of the finer points. They changed the names for this office because they were trying to make the office appropriate for what the phenomena was, which was becoming more obvious to people, right? And yeah, you can show those links. There they are, right there. And there's a little pile of poop.
You have the most elegant, well-organized website I have ever seen. I spent several hours there recently.
So they ended up, and why did the name keep changing? So, and this is fascinating. Language is a big deal in activism, and I talk about it all the time. So for all those years prior, it was UFO. Okay,
right.
And UFO was the stigma term. It was the fundamental stigma term. There were side terms, tropes, tinfoil hat, UFO believer, all that kind of stuff. But UFO was the key term, and that is the term that the ridicule just created, like one of those balls of string. And over the years, it's got bigger and bigger and bigger. Just say the word UFO at a business meeting, and the next thing you know, you're in the boss's office. And so it was all UFO. And so that was a problem. And so the activist movement, of which I'm part, really made an effort to try to change the term to UAP, unidentified aerial phenomena. Why? Because we knew it was going to be easier for that to come out of the mouth of a journalist or a professor or a politician than UFO. Meant the same thing, didn't have the stigma.
And I think also it covers a lot more ground. It's not just about, the flying saucer anymore. It's about all kinds of phenomena that has been witnessed. Not
quite. The first change was UAP, unidentified aerial phenomena. It was exactly the same as UFO, but it didn't have the stigma. So that change occurs. And so they're using UAP in the language. The UFO is not in the bills. It's all UAP, right? Mm-hmm. So now that's good. So you see they're trying to get the right language, which is not something you do if you're really playing games with this and you don't care. And then as more and more information comes out into the general public and more information becomes available to members of Congress, they knew, as we know, that they don't fly in the sky. They're also underwater.
Yes, they are.
USOs, okay?
Yeah.
And they're probably in space. Yeah. And so at some point, they realized, UAP, it doesn't cover it correctly. And this office has got to cover the whole phenomena. And so as you look through the legislation, it morphs into unidentified anomalous phenomena, UAP. Mm-hmm. Now, this can get confusing, right? And people are going, what is it now? I get it. It's okay. Unidentified anomalous phenomena. Okay. And that's fine. That covers almost everything. Like everything that ever happened in Skinwalker Ranch could come under unidentified anomalous phenomena. Yes. Okay, and they worked with that for a while. But ultimately, they came up with and by the way, UAP was a decent acronym. And of course, UAP for anomalous phenomena was a decent acronym. But they still didn't have what I consider a really good one, and it need to be new and pretty much unique. In other words, it's kind of, this is the new term, this is the new name for this group. It shows that we're in the 21st century. They came up with all domain anomaly resolution office, AARO. Now, first arrow, it's good. All right, let's face it. It's the only way to pronounce it. It's not AO, it's arrow. Yep. Got the air in there. All domain. That means everything. But it's not anomalous. It's all domain. So it's not ghosts. It's not Bigfoot. It's all domain anomaly resolution office. And everybody understands that is this phenomena in space, in the sky, underground, in the water. All of that is now, they've covered it all. And those in this field are not shocked because we have been reading books and research on all of that going back decades and decades. And of course, if you're in the UFO thing and then you start talking about underwater, they say you're even more crazy than we thought. Okay. Now it turns out, oh no, we had it right all along. And so that is the name that's going to stick unless this report makes it so stinky that they try to come up with something else. All domain anomaly resolution office. And boy, do you like that last two words, resolution office. This is about resolving it. None of that was inferred by the previous names, Aero,
No.
I mean, UAP, UFO, and all that stuff. So, okay. All right. So fine. That's in the third tranche of legislation, Spark My Warner. So we're charging forward now. More, and by the way, all this time, more people are going up on the Hill. And in addition to having private meetings with members of Congress, maybe an even broader group of members of Congress, there are people going up and talking to Aero. So the witnesses are just piling up, like a log jam on the freeway. And so now it's time for the fourth tranche. We're talking 2023. And everything is pretty much on schedule. I have a pretty good idea what that bill is going to be about. It's going to pretty much it's going to finally set the stage for put the final act on, or the epilogue. For the president to come forward and confirm the non-human presence. Okay, right on schedule, looked fine to me. And then something happened. This is history, right? Like in the early days, it was COVID, right? That kind of slowed things down, and yet we move forward. And then after that, COVID is kind of coming down, and then Putin decides he wants to, be czar, Putin the second, and we get an awful, ugly war in Europe. That didn't help, but yet the issue continued to move forward. Those issues, but those things were independent of the phenomena. But then something happened that really changed things. It wasn't what I would call fatal in any way, but boy, did it complicate the situation. And it was already complicated. And very quickly, everybody knows about this, is that, and I should point out that there are thousands and thousands of people, men and women, active or retired, who have engaged, know about, and are somewhat up to speed on the all domain anomalies in our government. And 99% probably have understandings and agreements and classification and NDAs, and they're not going to speak. But they're there. And with that many people, and as the legislation comes forward, the wrapping on the package is just starting to come off. And the likelihood of some people coming forward that normally wouldn't is going to grow and grow, which is why they needed to get it done as quickly as possible. I mean, get this done, get this play done so the president can step out. If you drag it out for whatever reason, right? Global warming, war in Europe, whatever the hell you want to point to, eventually something's going to happen that you didn't expect. And that,
or that you might not have any control over.
Well, by definition of it coming out, you didn't have control over it. Yeah.
Right.
And so what happened? It was David Grush.
It was David Grush.
Was the Black Swan event that was probably inevitable because they couldn't get this done. And he steps forward out of nowhere. Nobody in my world saw it coming. Nobody. Top researchers, Dolan, all of them. Danny Sheehan.
No, I didn't. Nobody I know saw it coming. I just wish that he had done his initial interview with somebody other than, I think it was Newsmax or News Nation. I mean,
well,
throws it into the conspiracy theory, bucket. And I was concerned about that, but I watched every word and listened closely. And he is absolutely believable. I don't care what network he came on.
Well, let me help you there. Let me make you feel a little better.
Okay.
News Nation is a very significant new network.
Yeah.
It's got big money behind it. And it was created to be a less partisan version of Fox, without question, to find a more middle ground. And it is doing very good work. And the interview he gave was to a totally competent, righteous journalist named Ross Coulthart.
Yes.
And so
Yeah.
that interview,
Very
believe me,
impressive.
that interview will hold up. Yeah, it's going to be fine. And let's face it, ABC News wasn't going to give him that interview.
No,
Right,
they
so
weren't going to touch it. None of the major networks were going to touch it.
Right. And so essentially, Ross, and it turns out that David Grush may be for News Nation what the Iraq War was for CNN, which made CNN, and it just took off, right? It became a major deal. Believe me, News Nation is getting a huge amount of traffic and awareness because of this issue, not the least of which it's, and by the way, if you were to do the analysis of the coverage over the last 2 years, in other words, this is triaged high-level coverage of this issue. The entity with the most amount of coverage is News Nation. All right. And now Ross Coulthart works for him. Okay. So that comes out June the 5th. Boom. Holy mackerel. What are we going to do? What's going to happen? What's going to happen? And so everybody now has got to deal with this new situation. A very credible person who worked for the task force, that was his job, and who tried to get, by the way, Danny Sheehan did know ahead of time. He did know. He's an insider. The researchers, all of my people didn't know. And so, but Danny couldn't talk because of, obviously client privilege and all that kind of stuff. So,
right.
What is the White House going to do? What's the Congress going to do? What's the Intel Committee going to do? What's the DOD going to do? What are they going to do? And they don't really know. At that point, they were, and here is, but it's a little less dramatic than that, because a lot of people inside the military intelligence community did know about Grush, but they did not think he would come forward. He had gotten very important information from inside people. He confirmed it with other intel people. And it was pretty major stuff. And he took it, I think, to, I believe, was the Intel Committee, initially staff, which I think he felt was his job. But a lot of people didn't like that. And so they started to give him a real hard time. Now, understand, this is a man that did 2 terms of service in Iraq.
Yeah.
Was really affected by it, very upset, came back to the States, suffering from PTSD, and having to deal with that. His life was falling apart. And then dealt with it, did everything necessary to get himself together so successfully he was given his security clearance and given high-level positions. That's who David Grush is, and that is what they were going to have to deal with, right? And so they underestimated. They knew he had gone to the Intel Committee, and then they knew that he then took his grievance to the intelligence community's Inspector General under the Office of National Security or Office of National Intelligence, and he got relief. One of the reasons he got relief is the lawyer that was representing him to the intelligence community Inspector General was the previous intelligence community's Inspector General. That's how serious that was. And he got some relief, but you can't stop harassment in these days. It's impossible to stop it. You can do it certain open stuff, but people who want to threaten you anonymously can do it. There's nothing you can stop. You can't stop it. And so he keeps getting death threats. And I think he also talked to Arrow. There's only so much they could do. They were probably hoping, look, he'll wait this out, be okay. Now, he said, I've had enough. And he does what he needs to do to get an article into the debrief and, of course, arrange the interview with Coulthart. They drop at the same time. Leslie Kean and Ralph Blumenthal wrote the article, okay, which is non-trivial because they were 2 of the people that wrote the December 17th article in the New York Times. So this is significant. And then, of course, the interview was pretty solid, right? And so all of this happens on June the 5th. Right? And now everything is going to change. All of my assessments have to be recalculated. Same thing at the DOD, same thing at the Congress. What do we do? Because for those that haven't forgotten, he told Roth Coulthart and Blumenthal and Kean that he had confirmation from inside people working on USAPs that we had multiple non-human tech and bodies. Exactly what the researchers in our field have been saying for 60 years, right? And told You don't know what you're talking about. It's all silly nonsense. Yeah, well, he just said, yeah, it's been confirmed to me. So that means what? It means one, Roswell was exactly what the researchers thought it to be. Two, there is extraterrestrials here, though we'll call them non-human for now. And there have been captured vehicles. That's the core of the fundamental information that it needs to eventually get to the public. That's the core. There's so much more. And he just said it. What do you do? Well, not surprisingly, their playbook is limited. Sean Kirkpatrick, in his anger and frustration, sends a letter to try to distance himself from Grush, attacking Grush. And why did he do that? The only reason that I can imagine is that at the point that Grush comes out, Dr. Kirkpatrick realized he's been set up. Not nefariously so much.
No.
He was, somebody had to be the director of Arrow because Arrow had to exist. And so they picked somebody with pretty good background, what have you, and they're the director. Did they shove tons of money in front of them and give them a whole bunch of stuff to do? No, they didn't. Why? And this is the most important point I'm going to tell your listeners and viewers tonight. Please take a note on this, right? Listen very carefully. I've been repeating it for a long time, almost 2 years, maybe longer, and well over 100 podcasts. Arrow was set up. The briefings were occurring on the Hill. The legislation that was put forward from the intelligence, from the Intel Committee of the Senate, setting up the UFO study group at NASA, God bless NASA, and a whole lot of other stuff, had nothing to do with trying to find out what the phenomena was. Nothing. Because the government already knows and has known since no later than July of 1947. It has nothing to do with it. Now, here's where it gets tricky. The government had to act like that's what it was. Mm-hmm. In other words, we got to do this, we got to do that. We need to find out what's going on up here, right? Could be a threat, could be a threat to air, whatever. Got to find out. And the people are going, yeah. And if you're a millennial or a Gen Z, hell, you weren't even you were born 50 years after Roswell or 69. I mean, none of that. You don't even know about that. And so they're going, oh, great. Yeah, great. They're going to find out what this is. That'll be fun. I can't wait to find out. Of course, there are huge numbers of people that know that it's real. The people, baby boomers like myself, who are pretty much responsible for maintaining the truth embargo. And it's our job in some ways to end it, right? We have at least a higher responsibility, I think. But it's simply to prepare for something else. But they can't say that. And that's why it gets really frustrating and confusing and irritating to people that know the field. What do you mean you're going to do that? What do you mean NASA's? Because why? And it's really not that complicated. But you have to like imagine a scenario. And this is the one that I use. It's pretty straightforward. Imagine that none of this has happened. No To the Stars Academy, no briefings up on the Hill, no legislation, no Arrow, just the same old stuff moving along, the odd coverage, whatever, more documentaries, more books by our compatriots. And then one day, could have been 2020, could have been 2021, who knows, Xi Jinping, the Emperor of China, which has enormous interest in space, very proud of their space work. They're sending, obviously, craft to Mars, the moon. They consider themselves one of the oldest civilization on Earth with a grand tradition, and they have 1.5 billion people. Xi Jinping comes out and says, yes, we do have an extraterrestrial presence. Here are 400 witnesses. Here is 500 hours of video of intercept planes and UAPs. And I am confirming to you today, we're not alone. Xi Jinping has done it. Yeah. No ramp up, no warning. And then what happens? The president of the United States, probably within 24 hours, unless they decide to make a counter move against China and we'll knock that down and keep the cover up going. Some idiot will probably raise his hand and say that. The president will have to follow suit. And so now that U.S. is disclosed, And there's none of this stuff. There's no scaffolding. There's no preparation. There's no organization. There's no legislation. There's nothing. And the day after disclosure, every journalist in the country is going to be cramming into every briefing room in this town. I know even the agricultural department, they'll be packed in there with 10,000 questions, all of which are brutally difficult to answer. It's absolute chaos. I mean, in a government to allow that to happen would be at the height of irresponsibility, and we certainly are capable of that. Yes. So that can't happen. What you have to do is get all this structure set up, and then once it's set up, hopefully our president will be the first one to disclose, and Xi Jinping can follow whenever he feels like it. And then, of course, the day after disclosure, when the world shows up at the doors of every institution in Washington, we're ready to go. Mm-hmm. Aero gets a quick funding of $1 billion, right? Maybe something like that. There's plenty of answers, and of course there's a UAP disclosure plan already in process, so people know, things are going to come out, and it's going to be orderly, it's going to be reasonable, it's going to be fine. But you have to set it up first, and they have a catch-22. And it's a beaut. One of the greatest books of all time. Read it, never laughed harder in my life, and yet I knew this book. Yeah, I knew this book was deep. It was talking about deep stuff that we need to pay attention to. The catch-22 is this: they were setting it up for a formal disclosure by the president, but they could not say that they're setting it up for that reason. They had to say they were just doing it to investigate. Because if they say, what are they going to do? We need to pass this legislation because extraterrestrials are here. We need an arrow because we got ETs here. No, you can't do that. And if the president were to disclose so they could set it up, well, that's the problem. He's disclosed and they got all this stuff to do. I mean, the world it can't, the only way they can do it is to lie and essentially their way out of the bigger lie for higher purpose. That's what this has been about. And until somebody gets that, they're just not going to be able to put the pieces together and have it make sense. Okay, so get back where we were. Grush has turned up and confirmed the non-human tech.
Let's put that photograph that you sent me up where you look so adorable right to the far right with, that face. I know that face. I love that face when you are so serious that you just look like a grumpy old man. I love that face, Steve.
Grumpy young man. But, I actually had gone through I'd gone through a very, very tough week, and I was absolutely exhausted. I don't look that bad. Okay, so now we're getting to the good part. Now we're getting to the really good part here. Okay, so somebody's got to make a move. It's like they just can't go, okay, that was kind of awkward. Let's just move on, talk about the agricultural bill. Let's see how many more House majority leaders we can, put in power, whatever. Yeah. And just pretend it didn't happen. It's like that Seinfeld show. It's a classic show. When George Costanza gets fired from a job, because he's George Costanza, right? And he goes and sees, I think it was Jerry that says to him, why don't you just go back on Monday as if it didn't happen? Just show up. It's a job, right? Okay. Show up. And so, you saw that. It's one of the great shows. And so some of them probably think, why don't we'll just show up Monday at the Pentagon, the Air Force, whatever, and just pretend it didn't happen, right? Well, no, that wasn't going to work. So I'm sitting there waiting, right, for 39 days. And now understand, the press is covering Grush like crazy. Go to my website, go to 2023, go to Print Media Archive and read all the articles about Grush. I assure you, people say they didn't cover it. It's ridiculous. Of course they did. That's ridiculous. Tons of articles. It was everywhere. So those are pouring it. So I'm waiting and waiting and waiting. Okay, these are articles. They're covering it. That just builds up the pressure on the government, doesn't it? Mm-hmm. And finally, I got my answer on July the 14th, which will be an historical day, as will Grush's testimony coming out, right? That's July the 14th, 39 days after Grush came forward, and the next chess move is made, and it's a beaut. Out of nowhere, not Warner or Rubio or Gillibrand or any member of the Intel Committee, all of whom have signed letters about this issue. They're all on board with their signatures about the fact that this has got to get done. Yeah. None other than the Senate Majority Leader, Chuck Schumer, steps in. He had not been involved. He had stayed out. Very political figure, not a member of the Intel Committee, ex officio, but not a formal member. He steps in, boom. And how does he do that? How does Chuck Schumer come into this? Well, he comes in front of a camera and he says, Mike Rounds of the Senate Armed Services Committee and I, with staff help, have put together a 70-some page additional legislation on the UAP issue into the Senate version of the bill. I think there was a little something up there already, nothing much, just 73 pages. Not a big deal. And what's in it? It's going to include a UAP disclosure plan in order to facilitate getting everything on this subject to the American people in an orderly way. It all eventually comes forward, some hold back, some forward, and then it goes in the archives. The whole process, it's just there it is. Starts right away after the bill is signed and goes on, I'm sure, for years. But there will be a steady stream of stuff coming through regarding this issue. And eventually it'll all come out. Okay. Oh, great. That's great. That's great. That's great. That's fine, Chuck. So what? And we're going to give people powers to make this happen. We're going to create a UAP review board appointed by the president, high-level people that will be part of the review process to decide what comes forward right away and what's held off for a while. And we're going to give them subpoena power. So if somebody would rather just not talk about it, they can subpoena them. Not a criminal process, but rather Mr. So-and-so in the USAP over there under that military base in Arizona or whatever. We want to talk about that program. We want you to come in for a private conversation. That person says, look, I got a secret deal here. I'm underground. Nobody knows who the hell I am. I got a good salary. I got great retirement benefits. Go to hell. And they're going to say, you don't show up, you're going to jail. Mm-hmm. And so subpoena power. And then also there will be certain committee members that are going to have special oversight capability in order to be part of this process in which we disclose over time everything. And we're giving them subpoena power as well.
Right.
Whoa. Okay. All right. Anything else, Chuck?
Yeah, it's getting real now.
And he says, and this bill will declare that the United States government holds eminent domain over that non-human tech and those non-human bodies that happen to be in any civilian or civilian organization hands. We have eminent domain over it. Now, a lot of people got misunderstood that and started raving about they're sending stormtroopers to Lockheed Martin overreaction. What he was saying is that if any of that tech in the view of the United States government has critical to the common good of the American people, we will declare eminent domain and we will take it. We probably will compensate, but understand these companies have made billions of dollars working on these craft and re-engineering and studying them. But nevertheless, it might give us more money, and then we'll do with it, and possibly we may then come back to you and do a joint venture. But again, it'll be the government controlling that tech and its development, not a civilian company with a bunch of patents piled up. All right, or we may not take it at all. I mean, we don't feel that is sufficiently in service to the common good that we need it. So you got it, patented, make a fortune. We don't care. So it's not as dramatic as it sounds, but yet in terms of this issue and what's at stake, it was a bomb that he dropped into the middle of the truth embargo. And I nearly fell out of my chair. And so there it was. That was the response that came, the first response from any element of the United States government.
Yep.
Actually, the first major response, Kirkpatrick's letter and attacking Grush was kind of response, but I'm talking institutional response.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and it really does go back to, we can't forget about Harry Reid. We can't forget about Mellon. We can't forget about the people that have worked long and hard on this issue to bring the truth to the forefront, that are now basically sitting back and in a position where, well, Harry's gone, but all they can do is comment on it now.
Well, we're not going to forget about it.
Feel some sense of satisfaction.
Well, again, things were looking good. Okay. And so we were very pleased. So that was the response to Grush that came. And it was much more powerful than I ever imagined it would be. And so we're elated, right? I mean, I was at the Contact in the Desert. It was the day at the last day of the conference, Contact in the Desert. By the way, there's another one coming up May 30 to June 3. You want to be there, trust me. And there were hundreds of us still there. We watched the interview with Ross Coulthart live. Then we went into the ballroom and listened to Danny Sheehan and Richard Dolan and some others kind of discuss it. And there was a lot of Q&A, and the energy level was just off the charts. So it was a great day, June the 5th. I'll never forget that day. Okay, fine. First response. Now, any other responses coming? Yeah. 12 days later, July 26, a group of House representatives, led by Tim Burchett, who had already been going on television, I think even before Grush turned up, and saying this issue is real. And there's extraterrestrials here. And it didn't hurt him politically at all. And so he's leading, and other members of the House are watching this and going, he's getting great press. It's going great for him. And I think they're here too. And so they're joining up. And the result of this is that they took advantage of the situation, very smart move, and said, almost certainly Grush wants a hearing as quickly as possible. He came forward because he was getting death threats. He's not going to sit around waiting for the Senate Intel Committee, the big one, to hold the big hearing. He wanted to get he wanted to get under oath. And so they said, fine, we'll put you under oath. And so once he agreed, I imagine getting Graves and Fravor was easy. And so now you've got a nice little hearing, three gentlemen, all retired military, all had clearances. And they hold the House Oversight Subcommittee hearing, July 26, which is, of course, that photo. And what happens then? I'll tell you, it was amazing. I said, how are they going to handle this? They handled it well. Was it nonpartisan? Absolutely. In fact, several of these members specifically stated this as nonpartisan. Even though the Democrats were way over in the side against the wall, I happen to believe, I actually don't think that's the proper seating. I think they were over against the wall, want to keep their distance, because Raskin is the ranking member. There's no way. I think I've got this right, but it doesn't really matter. The point is it was nonpartisan. Okay. And so he then repeats everything he told Coulthart under oath in front of a lot of people watching around the world. Okay. That pretty much takes it to another level, doesn't it? And there was, people should watch this and rewatch this hearing. It's up there. It's easy to find. I need to get a link to that too. I will do that, put it up on my site. But there was one moment in that hearing that really stuck out that some people may have missed. And that is, and the nature of these hearings, and one of the reasons why they'll be fine, because people think, they're all going to lie. No, they're not. Absolutely not. They're going to have to lie. No, they're not. It's very simple, this kind of stuff. You ask a question, and there's two options. You either tell the truth, or you say, I cannot speak openly about that, but can speak in classified setting. Okay, you don't have to lie. And of course, they all agree. That's why the hearings will not be a problem. Nobody's going to lie. Nobody would be stupid enough to lie on this issue under oath in front of Congress. Nobody is that stupid. So, but in the process, you learn things even when they can't answer. Yes. And that's unavoidable. Okay. And so there were several points where he said, I can't go into that in open session or what have you. But most people watching that probably knew nothing about a process called DOPSTR. And DOPSTR is a process, that's an acronym for a process in which any person with classified status is going to testify in front of Congress. They run by everything they can say and not say. And they're told, you can say this, you can't say that. Say this, you can't say that. And he did that. He absolutely did that. And he stated several times when he gave his testimony, he was observing all of the DOPSTR criteria.
Yeah,
right?
He adhered strictly to the guidelines. Yeah. I'm still shocked that they let as much out as they did. I'm still shocked.
Yeah, I get it. But of course, I've been following this process, particularly the last 7 years. And so I understand how it happened. My shock was not that they would do it. My shock was it finally happened. I mean, because it could have taken longer, but it was inevitable and it had to happen. And so I'm happy. All right. So several times he's asked this, but then there's this one question that was so sweet. Nancy Mace, I believe, Representative Nancy Mace, is the one I think that asked it. If it's Luna, if it's Luna, I apologize. One of the two congresswomen asked this, but I think it was Mace. And it goes like this. He says, David, our Major Grush, you've stated under oath that we have non-human vehicles and bodies, which is true. He had. Okay. Would you happen to know the locations of the non-human vehicles, where they're located, right? And what he was supposed to say, I think, was, I cannot discuss that in open setting. We can go to private setting. But that's not what he did. He said, yes. He said, yes. Meaning, yeah, I know the locations of these, meaning he was also given that information. And I'm sure some people over the Pentagon, they were in the Pentagon dining room, they just spit up some, whatever, their coffee or onion
whatever.
soup. You go, oh God. And so fine. But it was particularly because of that answer that they immediately wanted to get in a skiff with him. They requested a skiff. Why? Because they wanted to get in a skiff where it was, again, not a public setting, and get the names of those locations. And the DOC basically went, oh, no. He's not giving me no skiff for you. Right. And so they couldn't get it. They finally did get a skiff down the lane, but by that time things sort of sorted out. They didn't get much information at all. But still, that moment, he just confirmed we have non-human tech, and I know where they're located. Now, you think that's not going to get him some more death threats? It did. And last I heard, not that long ago, he was still getting death threats. All right. Okay. So that was a major moment. I was there in the room. I'll never complain again about anything that never happened to me, or I have no more regrets. So this is a bombshell's taken to another level, right? So that at that point, now we're talking July 26th, the three things that have happened in a row. Grush comes forward. Schumer makes a bold, major move on the legislation.
In a very understated way, by the way. I was impressed.
And so at this point, essentially the truth embargo's back is up against the wall. They realize, oh my God, the bears are in the house, right? And what are we going to do? What are we going to do? And we found out weeks later what that was. Weeks went by. We weren't hearing a thing. Of course, we're all excited. We're anticipating that legislation. Wow, that's going to be it. That's the ball game, right? And then we went out and read it. And when you read it, it was even more powerful than what Schumer said. And we realized that's it. I understood that bill was everything else that was needed. The scaffolding was done. The seats are done. The banners have been hung. And now the president can step up on the scaffolding and take the oath of office officially. And instead of this case, it would be disclosed. So it was all set up. It was perfect. And I'm thinking, hey, that's great. And then we started getting information that something was going on behind the scenes. It came out as rumors, and a lot of people were guessing on it, trying to figure it out. I jumped on it. I think I was a little off center. I had to back up because, again, it was very clear, but ultimately we found out what was going on. And here is what happened. And I like to refer to this as a chess game. I always use the chess game analogy. And Schumer is the grandmaster, and the Pentagon is a decent player. So he made his move on July the 14th. They made their move approximately a month and a half later, and they had no choice. This was a situation where you're in the end game, and the great player, it's looking like the game will probably be a tie. And then all of a sudden, the great player makes a move that literally forces the other player to make a move, which no longer is a tie. It's a move or two from checkmate. And that's what Schumer did. Let me explain. They only had one thing. There's only one option they had. They only had one move. They had to gut the bill. They had no choice. And by that I mean the people that hang out in the truth embargo world, the people that are managing it, the people that are benefiting from it, all of those people had to gut that bill. How do you do it? What are you going to do? Set the Capitol on fire? I mean, you've got to
Tried
get to
that a little earlier. That didn't
that didn't work. You got to get to the certain powerful people, and you have to lean on them, convince them they need to go to the people that are in the conference, actually finishing the language of the bill that will ultimately be voted on by the House and Senate and passed to the president, and take all that stuff out. They may say, well, how do you do that? Well, it's old school. It's very simple. All of the defense contractors have very high-paid lobbyists. All of the defense contractors give millions of dollars in campaign donations to members that they favor. And because that's what you have to do now. You have to raise untold hundreds of millions of dollars in order to get an office that pays $175,000, which obviously is not going to end well. But, I'm not in the Supreme Court. I wasn't involved with Citizens United, but, we do stupid things in this country and then we pretend nothing will happen in any event. So what they did is they sicked their lobbyist representatives, whatever the hell, go up on the hill, get this bill gutted. And they did. And who did they target? They targeted people with power who get large campaign donations from the defense contractors. Mike Rogers, House Chairman of the Armed Services Committee. Mike Turner, House Chairman of the Intelligence Committee. Michael Johnson, the House Majority Leader who has the power to put a bill up or not put a bill up. I haven't been able to check
repeatedly. Yeah.
I haven't been able to check if he's getting defense contractor donations or not. I'm going to say yes. And that wasn't enough. They needed a senator and they got Mitch McConnell. So Mitch McConnell, Turner, Rogers, possibly Johnson, essentially, because the conference is not like it's 24 hours a day. I mean, they're meeting 5 hours a day and then they go have dinner. And so they're getting to them. They're not going into the room where the conference is being held. They're getting to these members and saying, we have to get the bill. We have to get the bill. We have to get the bill. And if you don't, well, we can make your life miserable. And they succeeded. And so ultimately, the final bill comes out, the final language, and we learn very quickly that what they did, Schumer, I think, in his move, already had two possible moves. So he's already planning to deal with two possible response moves. Because again, he's playing high-level chess. They're not that good. In what he put in the eminent domain, I believe that he felt it could be a bargaining chip that they could trade off to keep the UAP review board and maybe subpoena power, some other stuff. We trade off the eminent domain, and so that these guys are going to make their trillions of dollars and get their patents and everything. And they'll let the other,
because that's really what they're worried about anyway. Really.
Yeah. So that was one possibility. The other possibility is they'd gut it all. He knew they did not have what it took to simply squash the bill. In other words, the whole thing is gone. I mean, he knew that they could not do that. That would be way too much. They couldn't do it. So they only had one other choice, and that was to get rid of the powers. But and ultimately what they chose to do, they went for the whole Monty. They gutted all the powers. They took them all out. Eminent domain, subpoena power, UAP review board, high classification ability for the people in the process, gone.
Any teeth that it had got ripped out. Yeah,
that's right. So what you ended up with is the basic structure of what Schumer was trying to accomplish in his language. In other words, it's all going to come out. It's going to be looked at. It's going to be, and then over time, whatever, and then it ends up in the archives, except no power to do it. So fine, doesn't matter. You haven't got the power to do squat. So at least for now. And so, okay, there you go. And so the defense contractors and everybody else are sitting back there going, it's a win for us. Feeling good. And then they realized they had been checkmated, or they were two moves from checkmate, because Schumer is a better chess player than they are.
Yeah,
because immediately thereafter, they turn on their television sets, and who is in front of the screen but Chuck Schumer and Mike Rounds? They go into the Senate chamber, and they read something into the record. Some people understand this, some don't. They're in an empty chamber. There's a camera in front of them, and they're making a statement into that camera. Both of them did. And because they're in the chamber, it goes into the congressional record. So this statement is in the congressional record. That's right. Well, it's being seen. But what's most important is it is on the congressional record. And what does he say? We're disappointed that this bill was diminished so much. We're a little angry at the Republicans for leading that process. But we are going to continue to work on this, and we're going to get this done. We're going to make this happen. And I was watching it. And I think at that moment, all of the people that felt that they had gotten to safe ground realized they were cooked. Why? Here's why. Because they had forgotten that while they had power over the people in the conference, the reconciliation conference that completes that writes the final language of the bill that will be re-voted on and sent to the president, they don't have any power over Mark Warner. I mean, they could go to him and they say, Mark, we're not going to give you any contributions anymore. And he's going to say, I don't give a damn. Yeah. Assuming he even gets any.
Right. I was just going to say that. Yeah. Assuming he gets a dime from them.
Yeah. They could threaten his life. They could kidnap him. But basically, they don't have any power. Mark Warner can call a committee hearing anytime he wants to. He is the chair. The Supreme Court cannot stop him. The White House cannot stop him. The Defense Department can't stop him. The Air Force can't stop him. They can't stop that hearing. And they're going, they probably have some idea there's 40, 50, 60, 70 witnesses that are already prepared to step in front of that committee. And dozens of them are grushes, essentially, with powerful testimony. And of course, the committee will have the ability to subpoena evidence if they want to, maybe put a few hours of gun camera footage up there, whatever. It's over. If that committee is held, it's done. It blows the truth embargo up, and they can't stop it. And so then they figured, wait a minute. If we can't stop it, he can hold the hearing. The witnesses will be seen by a couple 100 million people. The truth embargo blows up. The president is going to step out and confirm the ET presence. And then Chuck Schumer and Mike Rounds are going to reintroduce the UAP Disclosure Act in full, word for word, down to the last comma, as a stand-alone bill.
Stand-alone legislation.
Which will immediately pass, and then it'll include the eminent domain. It'll go right over the House, and whoever happens to be the House Majority Leader at the time, God knows.
Just wait a few minutes; it's about to change.
They have no choice but to pass it. And now, all the defense contractors are facing the exact situation that they tried to avoid. Only now, they're dealing with the eminent domain with a really pissed off Congress of the United States.
Yeah.
And so they realize we are screwed. And so that's where things were at that point. All right. And so you're seeing, so what is happening now is not that it wasn't happening already. And that is that the formation of groups and lobbying and activist projects that are just emerging here. I can't even keep up with them, right? People I've never even heard of coming in, getting involved. So you have an activist movement now spreading. Docs being done, streaming material is moving forward, and of course, lots of media coverage. That just got put into overdrive because what they did in gutting the bill is they really got people angry, and that now they're much more intense. They've intensified their response, and it's not going to let up. So that happened, right? And so they're dealing with that. I can speak to some of the developments that have taken place. After many, many years of wanting to do this, Danny Sheehan, the legendary civil rights and justice activist attorney, finally got the funding to launch the New Paradigm Institute. And he needs to raise millions more, but he's going to get it. newparadigminstitute.org. He's already got a substantial staff. You have an office right there downtown next to the Capitol. And they've already got an advanced website. They have a section on the website where anybody can go tell all their members, their two senators and their congressperson, their thoughts about why we need disclosure. That's all. And thousands and thousands of emails are going in. They're putting together groups, activist groups around the country. They may even go international. You know, and the more millions he gets, the more stuff he's going to do. So that's launched. Gary Nolan, one of the original 10 that came forward in 2017, Nobel Prize nominee, he has put together a very substantial think tank called Soul Foundation. And it's more like a science think tank, got all these super scientists involved, high level stuff. That's on the West Coast. Okay, that's done. Paradigm Research Group, my little thing, has always been a sole proprietorship, so I could operate under the First Amendment. I just filed as to be a nonprofit. And so very soon I will be a nonprofit and able to raise money as a think tank, right? I can still do activism and I can still operate on my own independent of it. But in terms of Paradigm Research Group, I will operate as a think tank and obey all those rules. But of course, the people that donate to Paradigm Research Group going forward will get a tax deduction. Prior to that, all those supporters that have backed me did not get that tax deduction, but they did it anyway because, well, they just felt that I could be useful. And so that's going to happen. And there are other groups that you can easily find. There's a UAP disclosure group. There's a, oh God, I can't even keep up with it. So all of that is happening, okay, as we go forward.
Isn't it great that we can't even keep up with everything that's happening? I think that's wonderful.
Absolutely. It's just, and my email is streaming. I'm getting podcast requests coming in relentlessly. I'm doing, well, let me put it this way. I'm averaging about one a day. So I'm doing 30 a month. Okay. So we are now moving into, starting now, going forward, one of the most important moments in the history of the human race.
Yes.
And here is why. We're one step away from disclosure. One thing, and that's the Senate Intel hearing. With assuming they bring in any really strong 20 of the umpteen scores of witnesses that have been coming forward, and they keep coming forward. One hearing away. It'll be worldwide broadcast. It will go on at least a week. That's enough. Morning, afternoon sessions. Two people in the morning, 2 people in the afternoon. That's 20. Okay. One hearing away. The president can walk out and disclose, and nobody will be the slightest bit shocked at that. It will not be political. Will not be partisan. And we are into post-disclosure world. Just one thing away. Okay. And nobody can stop it. But we're also in a situation right now. It didn't have to be this way, but I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised. Where the situation, both domestically and internationally, is a friggin' disaster. I mean, we're not having a world war. That's really a disaster. Okay.
No, but it feels very much like a prelude to it, especially when your ex says, go ahead and do whatever the hell you want. Oh, it's just NATO. Just go ahead. If that doesn't set people back on their heels, I don't know what will wake the world up. I don't know.
It is a mess, but of its own type, but it's still a mess. It's maybe comparable to the worst of the 20th century. And here's what I mean. World War II was tough. The population since then has doubled. It's now 8 billion. Okay. There were no nuclear weapons during World War II, except at the very last month. Now we've still got 25,000 and new weapons being created all the time, more advanced, more sophisticated, including the potential for nuclear weapons in space. We have genocides happening in multiple locations, one major war, and threats that have taken us closer to nuclear war than ever. Even the Cuban Missile Crisis, not that close. We have massive political upheaval in the United States, unprecedented. Nothing like this has happened. Quite like this. We've had our problems. We've had our moments. But this stands out. Okay. And so it is a freaking mess. And we're about to go into, or we're about to really get into, what by any measure will be one of the ugliest, bizarre, upsetting, hellacious presidential or presidential year campaign in the history of the country. It's going to be unbearable. People are going to lose their mind. The television sets are going to be flying out of 8-story windows. It's not going to be fun. It's going to be awful. And yet,
It's already awful. It's just going to get worse, Steve. 2024 is, in my prediction, and I have felt this from them lifelong, since I was old enough to understand what a calendar was. 2024 was the year, the pivotal year, and I knew something major was going to happen. But it wasn't until last year that I understood exactly how imperative things are. And this is the year, Steve. This is it.
Mm-hmm. And so what is the nature of this extraordinary historical point? It's this. This can be an incredibly good year or an incredibly bad. And somebody said, wait a minute, how can it be good? It's no way it can be good. It's no good here. No good. No good at all. No, not true.
No, there is.
If Warner holds the hearing and the witnesses testify, and it's clear that the ET truth embargo is over, and the president comes out and he does it soon, here's how 2024 goes. Okay. The most profound event in human history has happened. It is totally nonpartisan. It allows people to look ahead into the future with interesting possibilities to get excited about. Okay. It will suck most of the venom out of the campaign process, which is coming, and give every candidate a nonpartisan issue to speak intelligently to. If he does it early, all of the 2,000 plus candidates that are balloted right now for the House, the Senate, and key governorships will be able to go read Richard Dolan and watch some documentaries and particularly James Fox's documentaries and all my colleagues, and get a little bone. They're not going to become experts, but they can get sense what's going on. They could read UFO and Nukes, right? Bob Salas's other book, The Faded Giant, whatever. Mm-hmm. And of course they will have seen the testimony, and they can watch that over and over again. And so they have some understanding that the most profound event in human history has taken place. And so they can freely answer questions about it as they campaign to be our next senator or member of Congress. And we will get some idea of what they think about that. And it will be very comfortable and nice to be able to watch some candidates who we absolutely hate make reasonable statements, intelligent statements about this issue, because they don't have to politicize it. They don't have to turn it into a political dagger to stick into the heart of their opponent. They can just talk about it like a human being, because this basically transcends politics and religion and finance. And so we'll see the real person. That'll be nice. And then this will go on for 7 months. And by the time it's time to elect, we will elect those members of the House and the Senate and the governorships, in which their view on the reality of ET presence and their thinking about how the post-disclosure world should go. And by the way, the post-disclosure world will already underway. Okay. Yes. As we decide who to elect. And then when we get the new government in 2025, we will have a government that generate to a much larger degree will reflect what our thinking and needs are and concerns regarding the fact that we've just learned that we're not alone in the universe and the ETs are already here. And that's how 2025 will start. This is great. This is fantastic. It will be a totally different kind of election. The outcome will be much more positive. It's fantastic. But what if he doesn't? What if he is persuaded by the usual, conservative aides? That's their job.
Into silence.
Yeah. Like lawyers. The lawyer's job is basically to ruin every deal you get into, right?
Right.
To say, now you can't do that. And convey them, no, you need to wait until after the election. And there's so much going on. Maybe the Ukraine war will be resolved by then. There's all these trials and everything else. Let's just do it after the election. Well, what does that mean?
Not good enough.
Here's what it means. It means that all of these people that are running for office are in this impossible situation. David Grush confirmed there's non-human tech and non-human bodies and have been in possession of the government the last 77 years. Chuck Schumer confirmed it. The defense contractors, because they went after eminent domain, confirmed it. Because you don't go after eminent domain about non-human tech if you don't have any non-human tech. Gary Nolan, the Nobel Prize nominee, went on TV, said there's ETs here. Tim Burchett says there's ETs here, right? And so the point is that it's just hanging over this massive campaign, and people are going to say, candidate so-and-so what do you think about non-human bodies? And they're going to be thinking, I better have no opinion about that, because if I do, I'll lose the election, or the president hasn't confirmed it. What's going on? What am I going to say? I don't want to get dragged into that. And so they're going to hem and haw and whatever. They'll make stupid statements like, that's all a bunch of tinfoil hat people. Grush is a tinfoil hatter. Don't believe him, right? And Schumer, well, Schumer's a Democrat, so obviously he's insane. Whatever. They're going to make even bigger fools of themselves than they would as opposed to the other scenario. The election will be even worse. It's going to hang over there, and it's going to make fools of everybody. That's the other way it can go. And how it goes is right now in the hands of one man. I assume he takes counsel from others, Rubio, Schumer, whatever. I get it. But basically, it's one man. He's not a bad man. His father was a very important politician, high rank, had a lot of very significant positions. So he comes from a political lineage. He has the chops, he has the intelligence, and he has the power. And so obviously I'm talking about this constantly. And I've also set up a little program called ShiftStorm. Don't forget the F. And this is shiftstorm.org. And there you can find how you can send unlimited numbers of tagged tweets to Schumer, Warner, Rubio, right? All of them. And you just send them, and they will turn up in their notification boxes, thousands, and they will be informed by their staff, and they will go and look at those and go, oh my God, look at this. And that's at shiftstorm.org. And that's been going on for months. I have no idea how many tweets have been made. I don't have any way to know, but that's how I'm helping, right? Some people gathered out front of Senator Schumer's office in New York yesterday, and not to protest, but rather to celebrate what he did and to show their praise for it. That's fine. But there's other things underway, I assure you. And so that is where we are at the cusp of history with a single man. It's not Grush. Grush has done his thing. I mean, I'm not saying what Grush is important, but he will be one of many witnesses who will testify.
He will be one of many voices. Yes.
And so Mark Warner's the man. That's who I invite people to go to ShiftStorm and tweet. You can also go, if you are a Virginia resident, you can email them. Don't rain calls down on the office. That doesn't help. Yeah. And let's get the word out. So that's it. We have about 40 minutes left. I'm prepared to take any and all questions. I assume.
No, we have 6 minutes left, my dear.
Really?
Oh, we just blew through 2 hours. Yeah.
I've got 7:48. I thought it went to
go to the 54, but
from 6 to 8.
You're right.
There's 4 questions in chat, but I got a quick one.
Yeah.
I don't want, because I got a million to you, but okay. What about that BS Pentagon report that came out 2 weeks ago trying to discredit Grush and some of the others, saying there's no evidence of extraterrestrial? But if you notice, they never said interdimensional.
Well, they weren't being that clever. I assure you, the odds are overwhelming that it's a star to star. But believe me, that's not what's going on. They were trying to shut down the whole thing, whatever it is, interdimensional, extraterrestrial, whatever, time travelers, doesn't matter. They want to shut the whole thing down. It's not going to work. It's going to fail. I can take a couple more quickies.
All right, I'm going to go so I can put them up.
Okay.
And I'll have you back, Steve, and we'll just do 2 hours of more Q&A. Do you see eminent domain happen with Lockheed Martin's Skunk Works research engineering products?
You mean that company that Ben Rich used to run that said we have the tech to take ET home, teasing us with that years and years ago? Absolutely. If eminent domain is passed, it will affect anything that Lockheed Skunk Works has related to ET tech. Scientific understandings that come from ET tech, but it's also true of all the other defense contractors. Lockheed has come to be the symbol for all the defense contractors that deal with this issue because of the Skunk Works and Ben Rich. But I assure you, it's not the only one that has that technology. Okay.
Okay. Laura, oh, I love her. Hello, in your opinion, what can we anticipate to happen next with disclosure and its effects?
Well, we want is
kind of, one way or the other. I mean, this is going to go one way or the other. We kind of just covered this in terms of this can be a really good year or this can be a really bad year. And ultimately, really, isn't it up to us, each and every one of us, accepting our own responsibility as being part of the solution or part of the problem?
what's next is the hearing. In other words, you're either gonna get a hearing from Warner. If we don't get a hearing from Warner, then you can expect a lot of serious trolling on the all-powerful internet, with a heavy emphasis on Twitter X. You can count on that. It's going to get harder and harder. You're going to see organizations forming, and you're going to see docs coming out. You're going to see a counter push from multiple sources, both coasts, that each day that goes by, that report has become increasingly ludicrous and embarrassing. That's not what happened with the Condon report, I can assure you. And it's going to be very painful. And it's going to undermine confidence in the DOD, which doesn't need that. It's going to undermine confidence in a lot of areas, not so much in Congress, except that people are going to be increasingly disappointed that Mark Warner doesn't step into history. Okay, you got another one?
What will happen?
Oh, after disclosing?
Disclosure.
What will happen is we will be in the post-disclosure world.
Yes.
And it's the most profound event in human history. It is so profound that I can imagine history may be bifurcated there. In very short order, there could be an understanding. It could be like a separate calendar. It's happened before, but it's usually with respect to a certain religion or a certain group. This issue is global. It involves everybody. And so if somebody would make a case, look, going forward, now let us talk about the post-disclosure year one. PD, year one, PD, and before disclosure was year one, BD, before disclosure and after disclosure, or it could be not post disclosure, after disclosure, AD, BD, AD, and that's the name of the book, After Disclosure, that Bryce Abel and Richard Dolan wrote, which is a nice preface for what's coming. I could see, because disclosure affects every single person on the planet, and so this moment deserves that, and so year one. After disclosure, it won't happen right away, but it could eventually come about, and I'd support it.
Steve, I can't thank you. I can't tell you how much I admire and respect you, and feel such deep, great affection for you and your work. We are out of time. I will bring you back. We'll just do a Q&A, and I'll get everybody ready and lined up and questions in advance, and we'll do that. But more than anything, I thank you for your contribution to the most important issue of this time or any other time in the course of human evolution. And with that, I want to thank everybody who joined us tonight. And I close the show the same way every week. Be the change you wish to see in the world. Be the beacon. Be the light you seek.